Most people assume that if it says extra virgin on the label, they are getting the real thing. But a University of California Davis study found that 69% of popular olive oil brands in America fail basic quality standards. Here is what that means for your next Costco run. That study was published by the UC Davis Olive Center in 2011, and it sent shockwaves through the food industry. Scientists tested the most popular imported brands in California and found that the vast majority of what Americans were paying premium prices for was not actually extra virgin olive oil. It was degraded, adulterated, or both. And the brands responsible for that fraud are still sitting in the Costco olive oil aisle right now. We are going through 5 of them and then giving you the 2 that are actually worth buying. Brand 5 to avoid. Star. You have probably seen the Star brand at Costco, usually in one of those large economy bottles with the classic Italian imagery. Green label, old world design, and the words extra virgin olive oil printed right across the front. It looks credible. The problem is that the label and the contents do not always match. In the UC Davis Olive Center study, Star olive oil samples failed the extra virgin standard 73% of the time. Think about what that number actually means. If you pulled 3 bottles of Star off the shelf at random, only one of them had a reasonable chance of meeting the legal and scientific definition of extra virgin. The other 2 were misbranded. Failing the extra virgin standard means the oil either scored outside acceptable limits on free fatty acidity, peroxide values, UV light absorption measurements, or did not pass sensory evaluation by trained tasters. Real extra virgin olive oil has a specific set of characteristics: a fresh fruity aroma, a clean taste, and a peppery or bitter finish that comes from naturally occurring polyphenols. When those properties are absent or degraded, the oil has no claim to the extra virgin category. Those polyphenols are the reason doctors and researchers associate genuine extra virgin olive oil with cardiovascular protection, reduced inflammation, and lower rates of oxidative stress. Degraded olive oil does not deliver those benefits at the same level. You are not just buying a worse product on the sensory side, you are paying for health properties that are significantly diminished or gone. Brand 4 to avoid. Carapelli. Carapelli leans hard on heritage. The brand was founded in Florence in 1893 and markets itself accordingly, with elegant bottles, traditional Italian aesthetics, and a story about olive oil craftsmanship passed down through generations. That is a compelling narrative. The data, however, tells a different story. In the UC Davis independent testing, Carapelli samples failed the extra virgin standard 73% of the time, matching Star's failure rate exactly. That kind of consistency at the wrong end of the quality scale is not a bad batch or a supply chain hiccup. It is a structural problem with how the product is being produced and sold. Here is a fact that surprises most people when they first hear it. Italy imports significantly more olive oil than it actually produces. According to data from ISMEA, the Italian Agricultural Markets Research Body, Italian domestic olive production is often far below Italian consumption levels. The gap is filled by oil imported from Spain, Tunisia, Greece, and other countries, which is then refined, blended, and in many cases relabeled with Italian origin language. A bottle that says "Product of Italy" can legally mean the oil was simply packaged in Italy, not that the olives were Italian. Carapelli's parent company Salov has operated within this industry environment for decades. When you pay for a bottle of Carapelli at Costco expecting Florentine craftsmanship, there is a very real chance you are getting a product that did not originate anywhere near Florence and that fails the standard printed on its own label. Brand 3 to avoid. Bertolli. Bertolli is the most recognizable olive oil brand in America and one of the most heavily sold at warehouse stores, including Costco. That market dominance creates a psychological shortcut for shoppers. If a brand is selling this many bottles, they must be doing something right. The quality data does not support that assumption. The UC Davis study found that Bertolli samples failed the extra virgin standard 73% of the time, placing it in the same category as Carapelli and Star. But what makes Bertolli a particularly important case is what happened after that research became public knowledge. A class action lawsuit was filed in 2012 against Unilever, which owned Bertolli at the time, specifically alleging that the extra virgin labeling on products that failed quality standards constituted consumer fraud. The case reached a settlement. The financial logic behind olive oil adulteration is straightforward, and understanding it helps explain why this problem is so persistent. At the production level, the price difference between genuine extra virgin olive oil and refined olive oil can be 3 to 5 times per liter. When you are operating at the scale Bertolli operates at, selling tens of millions of units annually across dozens of markets, even partial dilution with cheaper oil produces dramatic margin improvements. The incentive to cut corners is substantial. And in the United States, enforcement of olive oil labeling standards has historically been far weaker than in Europe. Bertolli has since changed ownership, but the brand's history in this area is well documented and verified through legal proceedings. That record matters when you are deciding where to spend your money at Costco. Brand 2 to avoid: Filippo Berio. Filippo Berio sells Italian authenticity extremely well. The green and gold packaging, the serif typography, the founding year of 1867 on the label. It is exactly what people picture when they imagine quality Mediterranean olive oil. And because it is priced slightly above the mass market options, many shoppers assume they are getting something better. The UC Davis testing found that Filippo Berio samples failed the extra virgin standard 67% of the time, meaning 2 out of every 3 bottles sampled did not pass the quality criteria for the category they were labeled under. At that failure rate, you cannot attribute the problem to isolated quality control lapses. This is a pattern. In 2014, a class action lawsuit was filed against Salov North America, Filippo Berio's parent company, targeting the misleading extra virgin labeling on products that did not meet the standard. The complaint drew directly on the scientific criteria established by the International Olive Council and referenced the UC Davis findings. The company reached a settlement. Here is the part that should concern you most if you have been buying Filippo Berio for health reasons. The brand runs advertising around the Mediterranean diet and heart health associations. Those associations are real and scientifically supported for genuine extra virgin olive oil, specifically because of its high polyphenol content and oleocanthal concentration. But those benefits only apply to the real product. Oil that has degraded, been adulterated, or been stored improperly loses those bioactive properties. When the product fails to qualify as extra virgin, the health claims in the advertising become misleading in a very direct way. Brand 1 to avoid: Colavita. Colavita is the one on this list that surprises people the most. They have a better reputation than some of the other brands here, marketed as a premium family-owned Italian producer and priced accordingly. If you have been buying Colavita at Costco because you thought you were getting a step above the mass market options, that instinct was understandable. But the UC Davis testing found that Colavita samples failed the extra virgin standard 56% of the time. That is a lower failure rate than Bertolli, Carapelli, and Star, but it still means that the majority of the bottles tested did not qualify as what they were being sold as. When more than half your product fails the independent quality test for its own label category, the premium positioning becomes very hard to justify. Something worth understanding about how these tests were conducted: the researchers purchased samples from regular retail shelves in Northern California, not from specially sourced batches or factory floor samples. These were the same bottles that consumers across the country were buying in their weekly shopping. The failure rates reflect real-world conditions, not edge cases. If you have been shopping at Costco and reaching for Colavita because it felt like the responsible choice, the data suggests that faith was not being rewarded. Brand worth buying: Kirkland's Signature Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Here is where things take an unexpected turn. The brand that performed better than almost every major Italian import on this list is the one carrying Costco's own name on it. In the UC Davis independent testing, Kirkland's Signature Extra Virgin Olive Oil samples passed the quality standard. The Kirkland Signature California Extra Virgin Olive Oil has received favorable assessments in multiple independent evaluations for meeting genuine extra virgin criteria. Part of the reason comes down to accountability. When Costco puts its own Kirkland name on a product, a quality failure reflects directly on the store. That creates a very different incentive structure compared to a national brand that sells through dozens of different retailers. Costco has direct leverage over the quality of what goes into a Kirkland bottle in a way it simply does not have over Bertolli or Carapelli. Look specifically for the California designation on the Kirkland EVOO. California-produced olive oil is harvested and bottled domestically, which eliminates most of the supply chain exposure to the adulteration and repackaging fraud that happens in transatlantic shipment. A shorter, more transparent supply chain means a more trustworthy product, and the California label is the signal you want to see. Brand worth buying: California Olive Ranch. California Olive Ranch is one of the most consistently reliable performers in independent olive oil quality testing, and it is available at Costco in larger formats, which makes it a genuinely practical choice for regular shoppers. In the UC Davis testing environment, California Olive Ranch was among the brands that passed the extra virgin standards. More significantly, they operate with full transparency about their sourcing. Their olives are grown in California, harvested at peak ripeness, and cold-pressed quickly after harvest. That production method matters more than almost any other variable when it comes to olive oil quality. The polyphenol content in olive oil begins degrading the moment the olive is picked. Speed of processing is one of the primary factors that separates genuinely high-quality extra virgin from oil that starts out with good raw material and loses it before it reaches the bottle. California Olive Ranch also includes a harvest date on their packaging rather than just a best buy date. Real extra virgin olive oil is best consumed within 18 to 24 months of harvest, and having the actual harvest date gives you meaningful information about freshness. That transparency alone is more than most of the brands on the avoid list are willing to provide. When you are at Costco looking at olive oil, that date on the California Olive Ranch bottle is telling you something every other label is hiding. Here is the practical takeaway when you are standing in the Costco olive oil aisle. The most expensive looking bottle with the most elaborate Italian heritage story is not necessarily the safest choice. The brands with the longest histories in American kitchens are the ones with the most documented quality issues. The two worth trusting are the one with Costco's own Kirkland name and California Olive Ranch, because both have transparent supply chains and a track record in independent testing. Next time you pick up a bottle, flip it over and look for two things: a harvest date and a California origin. Those two details will tell you more about what is actually in that bottle than any crest, flag, or founding year on the front label ever could. If this video saved you from wasting money on something that calls itself premium but delivers something much less, drop a comment and let us know which brand you have been buying. And subscribe if you want more of this kind of research, because the same fraud running through the olive oil industry runs through a lot of other products in your Costco cart, and we are covering all of them.